who's Associate Professor of Modern South Asian Studies, and is the person behind the Center for Global South Asian Studies, and very eminent researcher in Copenhagen. Behind so many conferences, you had a fantastic workshop which I didn't missed last week. So many good researchers from here and there, and always happy things in Copenhagen. So we're very jealous about your activities. So you will today talk about post-exotic India, or on remixed histories and smart images, and you will soon explain to us what this means.
Yeah, I'm just going to wait for a second for the globalization governance development in New India. So basically what I have been doing together with a group of researchers is to bring together, to open up new venues of research in the field of post-reform India. And I think this is something which I don't need to probably explain to anyone, that India is supposedly going through the great transformation, in the last 25 years or so, that India is it no longer sees itself as a post-colony, but it sees itself as an emerging market. So I think what we are trying to do is to look at the new, this whole idea of novelty or newness, that what is it? In what ways is India, that newness is experienced or talked about in India? So of course there is one idea of social mobility, that there is some kind of increasing prosperity or new wealth which is being generated, new class formations are taking place. There is talk about new politics which is going on, that there is a new popular mobilization among middle classes which is going on, and some of the examples of course are Aam Aadmi Party and so on and so forth. And then of course there is this whole talk about new economy, so new economy, new politics, new modes of pleasure, new modes of being. I think this is that large spectrum that we are trying to look at in various possible ways. So I think what I'm going to talk about here, or my own work, is about how India itself has been, is transforming. What does it mean to be an emerging market for a nation? What does it mean to live in an emerging market? What does it mean for a nation to be perceived and to be seen as a commodity which can be branded, which can be sold to investors, because India sells itself to the investors as the most attractive destination. So what does it mean to be an attractive destination in the world? So I think this is a broad explanation or introduction to the work that I'm engaged in. And within that, what I'm going to talk to you today is about what I call post-exotic India, or to engage with the history of India. And basically, you might have noticed, if you have, I suppose everybody has been to India. But even if you have tried to go to India and been to the Indian embassy, you might have been handed over a brochure with Incredible India logo printed on it. If you're in the plane and you're on your way to India, you'll be given a little card, disembarkment card, with little Incredible India logo printed behind it. So what I'm going to tell you today is that story of Incredible India and the logo. So I'm going to read some parts of it out, and I have some pictures that I want to show you as well. So I think I'm going to begin with this a little piece over here, and this is basically from a placard in Berlin, it's from an exhibition in Berlin in 2007. It says, "Hop aboard for this ride of your life. India 2.0 is hurtling down the information superhighway, carrying its mind-boggling baggage of ever-accelerating GDP, extreme geography, kaleidoscopic culture, deep-rooted spirituality, and photogenic chaos into a fascinating future. Watch history being remixed right in front of your eyes. Incredible but true." Now, the invitation above to watch history being remixed was displayed on a placard placed at the India Pavilion in International Tourism Bourse, ITB, at the spectacular global launch of Incredible India, which is India's post-reform India's largest and most visible nation publicity campaign that sought to transform India's image from a third world nation to a global player. Imagined as a fast-paced, colorfully decked auto rickshaw, which is the next slide, India 2.0, the visitors were told, boasts of, and I quote, digital entertainment system with a selection of Bollywood hits, satellite TV for cricket and stock market updates, smog fog lights for all weather, rural-urban capability, incense stick holder for mobile meditation, eco-friendly engine powered by compressed natural gas, unquote. In a clever wordplay, as would be obvious to you, a number of keywords associated with India, the familiar Bollywood, cricket, spirituality, culture, incense sticks, and the new seductions of GDP, stock market, information superhighway, and satellites, are humorously strung together for a greater recall value to create India 2.0 with unique features. Each of these high technology features is represented in the form of a graphic icon, which techno-friendly publics across cultures are familiar with. The choice of the usually slow-paced auto rickshaw as a vehicle to represent New India is noteworthy. The desire to reimagine what is our own as a vernacular forerunner of global futures. So the India 2.0 then appears as a seductive, polychromous package of hyper-technology and great civilizational culture with wide-ranging aspects difficult for anyone to grasp at a glance. Yet, this is precisely what the designers of India 2.0 seem to be aiming at, to condense and to make legible the vast complexities and contradictions of India across temporalities to the outside world. The global publics could now witness a live performance of an ancient civilizational culture morphing itself into a state-of-the-art, high-speed vehicle prefiguring the 21st century futures. So in this paper, I examined the aesthetics of remixing history at the heart of the neoliberal project of India's image makeover as the land of limitless opportunity, or incredible India, for global tourists and investors. The use of the verb remix is telling about the nature of the project. While remixing, literally speaking, means blending together elements together, once again to harmonize and smooth out rough edges, it has a different set of connotations in popular culture, especially in the field of music. To remix means to cut off the original, isolate elements, repeat, rearrange, and add contemporary effects in order to create an altogether different version than what was before. Now, if anybody has been DJing, they would very well know what remixing means over here. So, remix is never an altered copy, but the original composition in its own right that rearranges the sensory experiences of the audience. In short, the remix version retains traces of the original, even while erasing it, to ultimately morph into its own being. So what I argue here is that the project of remixing India's history in the nation branding project is predicated upon this ontological fault line. How to retain and erase the original simultaneously while shaping the new in the contemporary global. At the core of this dilemma is the cultural politics of originality, or inalienable essence of India itself that occupies a contested domain in contemporary Indian politics. Taking incredible India as an example, I further argue that the original essence of India is revealed and authenticated in the very moment of its disappearance, as it is remixed and morphed in the aesthetics of the contemporary global. If the romanticized pre-Islamic Hindu civilizational culture forms a part of the archive of the post-exotic, the other is the familiar exotica, natural landscape, wildlife, cultural forms and practices through which India has long been perceived in the foreign eyes. The paradox of incredible India images is this: if the exotic draws attention to the enigma of India, it also risks overshadowing neoliberal India's desire to be seen as the high-technology, investor-friendly land of limitless opportunity. So to be sure, India is not the only nation that has embarked upon the project of nation branding in the past decade or so. In fact, nation branding is increasingly becoming an ubiquitous strategy to create a new form of territoriality in the world of free markets. Consider brand campaigns such as Malaysia Truly Asia. If you have seen BBC, you would have seen this too. There is Cool Korea. There is Croatia, the Mediterranean once it was. There is Turkey, Discover the Potential. Brand South Africa, and amazing Thailand, and to which we can add wonderful Copenhagen and probably Greater Scandinavia, something or the other. So there are many, many possibilities to brand regions and territories. If India stands out in this field of nation brands, then it is for its highly ambitious pitch and as a pioneer in shaping the global aesthetics of this genre of global advertising. Incredible India is also different from all other advertising campaigns undertaken by the Tourism Ministry before, in that they created little brand recognition of value. The only memorable campaign or logo produced prior to Incredible India was that of Maharaja, the mascot of Air India that became a familiar face in the tourism sector. Some people do recall Maharaja. Yet its appeal and reach was limited to publicizing the airline and not the nation itself as a product. Incredible India belongs to an altogether different moment where the nation form itself is fast changing into commodity form in the global political economy. So in this paper, I trace the tensions and conflicts in the nation brand making at three interlinked levels. The act of visual framing of a post-exotic nation in the Incredible India campaign, and then the world of policy makers, bureaucrats, and designers, where imagination of India's post-exotic self is negotiated. And finally, the ontological tensions upon which this new self is underpinned. So the post-exotic self, I show, is not produced by effacing or removing the exotic past, but by condensing, accelerating, and fast-forwarding it into a timeless, infinite global present. And in doing so, it also reveals the blueprint of the ongoing visual rearrangement of the nation's civilizational past in the making of New India. In what follows, I describe the making of India's first global image campaign for tourists and investors and the ways in which it is intrinsically linked to the demands of neoliberal economic reforms. So I begin with the story of how this campaign itself was perceived and formed. The origins of Incredible India campaign are located in a deep sense of crisis when the nascent India growth story was said to have experienced its first serious setback in 2002. It is a critical moment that was often recreated passionately for me during my conversations with government officials, commentators, and journalists, attempting to narrate India's upward mobility towards the high table of global politics. The account was roughly along the following lines. A decade into the economic reforms, the magic of the India story was unraveling after losing its momentum of the boom years. While policymakers in 2002 had modestly pegged the growth prospects at 5.4% that year, the actual growth at 4% was turning out to be the lowest since the reforms were initiated. The constantly sliding figures were edging worryingly closer to the much-feared Hindu rate of growth, signifying the economic stagnation of the pre-reform decades, causing alarm in the policy circles and among the middle classes. Now, some of you would also remember that in 2013 summer, there was also a big economic dip, which also caused a lot of crisis, and actually the political mobilization, which ultimately led to the new government formation last year. The constantly sliding figures were, as a sense of panic seeped into the public discourse, the crisis became a time for reflection, I quote, among policymakers calling for a serious rethinking of India's failure to reach its full potential. So how might India recover and realize its rightful place in the global scheme of things? This question became the basis of a variety of intense debates within the government apparatus that sought to bring India's potential into the realm of possibility. At this stage, the Ministry of Tourism commissioned a market survey that revealed India's lack of a discernible identity, or rather, I quote, a strong and clear image that could enhance its desirability, unquote. While India's rich history, culture, and economic growth potential were well recognized internationally, its actual performance was found to be suffering from a deficit, I quote, of positioning, common branding, or a clear, precise message, unquote. In other words, India had an image deficit because of which the exchange value of its assets was not being fully realized in the global market. It was not that India did not have a prior image. The problem was found to be just the opposite. It had too many images, or as I was repeatedly told, India had a crowd of images, mostly consisting of cliches and stereotypes, spirituality, wildlife, ancient civilization, maharajas, and magic besides chaos and poverty. What it did not have was a smart image with a contemporary global aura. Clean, minimal design enabling India's authenticity and appeal among global publics, through which India could reconnect with the world. It is this perceived deficit that became the basis of search for a unified smart image that would make visible, I quote, the contemporary feel of a young nation, unquote, rather than enforcing, again I quote, the cliched visuals such as the saffron-clad sadhus in the Himalayas and rope tricks performed amidst crowds, unquote. These cultural stereotypes that equate India with ancient mysticism, material deprivation, and dystopic visions are particularly loathed by the Indian elite for aligning the sign of India with the non-rational world of superstition and consequently backwardness. The dilemma was how to extract economic value from the very cultural exoticism that one wished to otherwise erase, or to articulate the designer's concerns, how to present a post-exotic nation in the outside world in a smart way. So I encountered the word smart frequently during my fieldwork among the advertising professionals. It was an oft-used catchphrase, and at first its almost reflexive use made it seem meaningless at some level. It appeared in all possible combinations: smart vibes, smart frame, smart image, smart look, smart feel, smart logo, smart design, or just being smart. And this was conjured to describe the quality of a given image campaign. The word smart invokes a range of meanings: sharp, intelligent, quick, witty, and neat, to paint a picture of impressiveness. Among the advertising professionals, it is seemingly used to indicate a presentable self that exudes quick wit, tongue-in-cheek humor, confidence, and intellect, unquote. These are personal qualities that can be proudly displayed without a shade of embarrassment to the outside world. The work of the incredible images, I was told, was to imbue and convey the attributes of smartness to the nation, to effectively transform the old exotic into the new post-exotic. The smart images appeared to be the labor of seductive science, alluring forms that establish and reiterate the potential of the nation, even as they disclose the sense of crisis within which they are conceived and fabricated, through which, first, contours of the post-reform nation were made visible that simultaneously sought recognition from and defied the global publics, and second, helped transform this generated attention from the outside world into surplus value. The work of the smart image, it was emphasized, was not only to imagine the nation anew, but also to redirect the foreign gaze so as to correct the long-held perceptions that mar the nation's image. The smart image was clearly as entwined with circulation and accumulation of global capital as it was with visualization of new histories that sought to construct, I quote, coherent and intelligible picture of modernity, unquote. This is not to suggest that the goal of creating visual coherence is necessarily realized, rather how unifying visuality is posed as the essential frame within which the post-reform nation's legitimacy is established both inside and outside. In short, the project of remixing history to produce smart images also seeks to position the state as the central authority that claims an exclusive right to visualize, to be able to look or see, firstly at the people, resources, and landscapes within its territory in order to enumerate, classify, and order the inside, and secondly at the world outside as legitimate representative of the nation's interest as well as honor its culture and history. As will become evident, the ability and privilege to look then easily transformed into the power to design the look, or appearance of the nation to be displayed in a global spectacle. The making of Incredible India is located on this interface of state policy, bureaucratic negotiations, and aesthetic sensibilities of advertising professionals, shaped against the weight of history and neoliberal economic reforms and dreams. So I'm going to take you to this advertising agency in Delhi where I met V. Sunil, a Delhi-based advertising professional who received from the government of India a very straightforward brief in 2002. He had been asked to initiate a global branding exercise, I quote, to create a distinctive identity for the nation, unquote. It was hardly a coincidence that this young designer had been offered as strategic and important task as branding the nation. In the advertising circles in Delhi, he had already made his name as one of the most creative minds of his generation. Sunil took up the project readily. As a recall, as all signs suggested that the creative project would not run aground into the maze of bureaucratic machinery. In fact, the bureaucratic hurdles had already been eased in a vision statement issued by the Ministry of Tourism earlier that year that outlined its aim to position India as, I quote, a global brand with worldwide brand recognition and strong brand equity, especially in the tourism trade and among the target audience, unquote. And 2, a premier holiday destination for high-yielding tourists, so no backpackers here. The stage was further set when the Planning Commission substantially increased and earmarked more than 1/5 of its annual budget for tourism and heritage that year for, I quote, brand building of India, unquote. The bureaucratic apparatus, as it turned out, was for once not only operating efficiently, but taking lead in what was said to be a moment of action in the nation's interest. The need of the moment was, or as the official brief translated in advertising terms meant, to create, I quote, a smart image that would present India smartly in front of the world, unquote. In the official narrative, the origin of the campaign is presented not as a routine instance of creative outsourcing by a government department to an advertising agency, rather as a joint effort where the bureaucracy creates an optimal environment, I quote, for thinking big, for focusing on professional promotion and marketing, and working with the best creative minds, unquote. The need for thinking big could not be exaggerated in this case, as the assembled group found, I quote, extremely difficult and complex to establish a clear, precise identity for a multi-product destination like India. India is a land of contrasts, a combination of tradition and modernity, a land that is at once mystical and mysterious. India is bigger than 23 countries of Europe put together, and every single state of India has its own unique attractions, unquote. And I'm quoting some of these things from Amitabh Kant, who is one of the prime bureaucrats in India, and he's also now credited with making this large mega campaign called Make in India, if you have heard about it. So could a single word or expression capture the rich cultural heritage, civilization, and economic potentiality of India? The only word which the creative team found to be close enough was incredible, said to be appropriate for a country which is, I quote, at times overwhelming, but always incredible, unquote. The word incredible literally suggests the quality of being so extraordinary so as to seem impossible, beyond belief, improbable, I'm quoting from the dictionary, and in a more informal sense, amazing or marvelous. Yet it was not the improbability of India that was being communicated here, rather its awe-inspiring and seductive landscape, natural beauty, millennia-old civilization, and rich modern culture that was being turned into its global signature. The use of incredible was precisely meant to invoke the alluring mix of magic and modernity in everyday life. Yet the idea of incredible, I was told, was not the original choice of policymakers, rather a negotiated substitute. The idea proposed by the Minister of Tourism, Jagmohan, was to call the campaign The Wonder That Is India, as that felt more representative of how India is known in the world. The tagline was evidently, as you might have guessed, it's a play upon A.L. Basham's 1954, the famous work called The Wonder That Was India, a survey of the culture of the Indian subcontinent before the coming of the Muslims. The title already indicates the temporalization of Indian history along the event of the arrival of Islam in the subcontinent, dividing it into before and after with specific and separate histories. While this widely read work has been long used as teaching material on ancient India, I'm sure you also use it here, it is also invoked by the Hindu nationalists as scholarly evidence of India's authentic, magical, and celebratory past that flourished until the arrival of Muslims. In popular discourse, the onset of Islamic era is seen as temporal transgression and ultimately the loss of the high Vedic culture. The minister's suggestion was to revive this long-lost essence of India, familiar through Orientalist scholarship in the outside world, and somehow transport it from the past to the present. The only alteration in the text, therefore, was to change the tense from was to is, and fast forward the past into present. This change of tense offered an important insight into how the Indian nation is imagined as a unique entity formed eternally in timelessness on one hand, and on the other, the anxiety of temporally lagging behind in the global race towards progress and development. The ideological persuasions at work were apparent as the minister's directive invoked the familiar Hindu nationalist discourse, where India's authentic past remains essentially Hindu, and what effectively defines its difference and exclusiveness in the world. The proposal, however, was quickly withdrawn, not because of any ideological turnabout, rather because of market surveys, which showed that the wonder that is India would be a non-starter, whereas Incredible India, I quote, in its creative form would be catchy, appealing, contemporary, and would make an impact, unquote. Once the final bureaucratic difficulty had been overcome, the creative challenge was to obtain a semiotic translation of the idea of incredibility into a readily legible sign. The sign found to be the most accurate representation of the idea of Incredible India was an exclamation mark. In many ways, the sheer form of the sign was both aesthetically pleasing as well as ambiguous. It could be interpreted in more ways than one in order to weave the India story imaginatively. The idea had first struck Sunil when he began examining the map of India closely to look for visual clues to create a graphic essence of Incredible India. So he told me, this is a story he's telling me, that the cartographic form appeared when he looked at the map as a long, beautifully curvaceous loop India. You just try and imagine the India map here, that narrowed towards the bottom and was held in place by a lush round spot, which is Sri Lanka. The contours of India, in its more abstract form, appear to resemble an exclamation mark. Please notice exclamation mark here. I'm sure you're familiar with it. The contours of India, in its more abstract form, appear to resemble an exclamation mark. In order to sell the idea, he presented a top shot of the globe to visualize the moment, I quote, when God created India. He placed a dot below to make an exclamation mark, unquote. The allusion clearly was to the mythical event of Manthan, the great churning that produced the universe and therein created earth for the humankind to live upon. India was produced in this churning and shaped an exclamation mark by the gods. The sense of awe and marvel thus was presented as a natural, innate feature of India that was etched on its very body and the basic sense of being. The very physical shape of India, because of its abstract likeness to the exclamation mark, was now read as a proof of its enchanting being. This was the making of a new creation myth, I would say, of the post-reform India, entwined with the older creation narrative of Manthan, where Sri Lanka was reinvented as an essential ornamental accessory. Needless to say, the idea was readily bought by the government officials, keen on presenting the magical difference of an ancient civilization within a contemporary frame. The exclamation mark was thus deployed to, and I quote, convey the mind-boggling depth and intensity of the Indian experience. Every aspect of India, be it its ever-accelerating GDP, extreme geography, kaleidoscopic culture, deep-rooted spirituality, or even photogenic chaos, is summed up by the simple yet profound exclamation mark, unquote. So even as the exclamation mark subsumed and unified a highly divergent range of facts, figures, sights, sounds, and images of India into an intense India experience, it displays its versatility and seductive appeal by invoking a variety of associations. Some visualized it as a pin with its head turned downwards and held together the idea of India. For others, it seemed symbolic of India with its iconic representation of bindi on the forehead in reverse. In a variety of modes, it seemed to work as an effective unifying symbol that had long been found lacking. The original brand architecture was built around the single word, India, but where I is replaced by an exclamation mark, which would package all official representations of India. Now this is a little bit of visual play here. Often many people don't notice, but often now you see in the global space when India is written, I is replaced by the exclamation mark. The suffix incredible was incorporated as a compromise formula upon ministry's insistence, but with an intention of eventually dropping it. The three evolutionary stages of the logo were designed as follows. I can show you. It's Incredible India, where India is written with an exclamation mark. Then it becomes India only with an exclamation mark. And ultimate, the final stage is where only exclamation mark remains as a symbol for India. The idea was to ultimately simplify the logo to exclamation mark that would turn into a signifier of India's magic and growth potential without the need for explanatory words. The logo was imagined visually on the lines of iconic brands such as Nike's Just Do It campaign which enclosed every image with a swoosh sign in order to graphically express energy and sport without the word. Everybody recognizes Nike sign, so this is the ambition here. The ultimate success of a brand logo, I was often told, was its ability to invoke emotions and create a vocabulary of its own. The essential ingredient in the recipe of a powerful brand is its ability, I quote, to express itself not just in terms of a product benefit, but in terms of a greater socio-economic truth, unquote. So we might ask, what innate truth constitutes incredible India? The answer was its ability to narrate artfully the changes set in motion by the neoliberal reforms and represent, I quote, a much bigger social phenomena, an optimistic and extroverted new India, eager to make its presence felt in the global community. It is this subtext that transforms Incredible India from a mere branding exercise into a pop culture milestone, denoting a turning point in the evolution of one of mankind's greatest civilizations, unquote. The exclamation mark in Incredible India, in short, was a symbol of a confident, prosperous, smart, and even humorous India in the 21st century. It is telling that the symbol chosen to describe India actually does not trace its origin to the archives of Indian culture and history. The exclamation mark, known as the note of admiration, was derived in the 15th century when print culture was becoming popular in Europe. It was said to have been an artistic derivation of the Latin expression for exclamation of joy that since has become an oft-used character in and even a prominent sign of the age of instant communication. I mean, all of you write text messages with a lot of exclamation marks. Huh? It was precisely its widespread usage and near universal recognition in the teleconnected world of instant messaging, broadcasting, and sharing of ideas and images which made the exclamation mark an ideal sign of India's aspirational post-reform incarnation. Or as Sunil put it, the exclamation mark could convey, I quote, the smart new vibe, the feeling of new India, unquote, to the world most effectively. Rather than choose an authentic sign, such as Sanskrit words or letters written in Devanagari script, as many had advised him to do, he had taken the opposite route of appropriating a sign that had prior meanings for the intended global audience. I mean, everybody understands what an exclamation mark is. The familiar sign was now framed as a smartly designed graphic device through which one could look at India just as India was looking back at the world. The first step, thus, in the project of remixing history had been fulfilled. The next step was to visualize and rearrange the nation itself through the newly designed graphic device. So I'm going to show you a few images over here, and this is from the inaugural campaign. I don't know if you are familiar, if you have seen these images. The inaugural campaign of Incredible India contained an eye-catching image of a young woman pictured in rickshaw, or the tree position in yoga meditation, against a distant blue silhouette of the Himalayan mountain range in the background. She can be seen standing upright on her right leg, her left leg bent and placed on the right inner thigh in a half lotus position. Her arms are stretched upwards and palms joined together in a prayer form. Besides her serene posture, what immediately catches one's attention is a chic clothing made of shiny stretch lycra material that would be at home in any urban fitness studio. She was described to me as a global yogini, someone who could belong anywhere in the contemporary world, yet retain her authentic Indianness. I mean, as I was told, she could also be in a Los Angeles fitness center and still she would be at home. The other remarkable feature of the picture is a large shallow bowl filled with water and prayer flowers which lie at her feet. Her body stretched skywards and bowl of flowers at her feet together create an arresting visual of an organic exclamation mark. Please note that creatively replaces I in India within the Incredible India signature. Do you notice this? Mm-hmm. This image was one of the first ones I was shown on a computer screen in Delhi as an example of the kind of look Incredible India campaign sought to recreate. It was precisely a desirable confluence of tradition and modernity in appropriate proportions that could publicize a contemporary version, which is India 2.0, of an ancient civilization like India. The ancient art of yoga, which literally means drawing of connections between the human body and the eternal being in order to attain liberation of the spirit, here is not performed by a yogini in her robes of renunciation, but a sculpted female body dressed in trendy sports ensemble that speaks to the contemporary urban ideals of fitness, beauty, and spiritual consumption. In this visual shift from renunciation to consumption, we witness the transformative work of the exclamation mark. On one hand, the mark superimposes itself on the natural landscape to imbue it with a contemporary quality, and on the other, subsumes the body itself to an extent that a body becomes a magical sign signaling the subtle rearrangement of the nation. This schema of subsuming, imposing, and interweaving the sign with material bodies to create the contemporary effect is something that we will witness repeatedly. The encounter with the image was particularly significant in the way it was framed for me, as smartly packaged reality. In this framework, two core ideas at the heart of the branding process, that is reality and smart packaging, were thus disclosed. So let us begin with the notion of reality itself in the process of remixing. The framing of images as reality predicates upon a possibility of interchange, overlap, and even continuity between the visions encountered in the image and reality, so that to view the images of incredible India becomes a bodily experience of the landscape, complete with its sights, scents, and sounds. And conversely, to bodily experience a landscape is turned into an encounter with the avalanche of images created in the past decade. Images in such a frame do not intend to function as representations, but they seek to replace reality itself. In fact, the strategy underpinning the project of image fixing aimed to, I quote, veer away from the traditional advertising approach, as opposed to staging unrealistic scenarios. The core motivation was to reflect the people, landscape, and emotions of India with a sincere honesty and simplicity, as visiting travelers would often find them when they arrived. We endeavored to portray, and I'm quoting the photographer of one of the filmmakers here, to portray the very same completely real emotions they would feel when they experienced India for themselves. All the moments shown in the film, there's an incredible film attached to this also, in that sense are real and readily accessible to those who seek them, unquote. So how are we to understand this very specific notion of reality said to be underpinning the smart images? Moving beyond the registers of truth and falsehood, the incredible India images begin making sense, I would claim, as signs of enhancement, where flawless visions of coherence are unveiled, illuminated, and amplified to the extent that all other realities are foreshadowed. The notion of enhancement suggests both embellishment as well as manipulation, but not necessarily to deceive, rather to convey the object of publicity in the best possible light. I mean, all of us do that. We take pictures and we enhance them, like brighten them up, like shape them. I mean, we all do that to make our pictures look good. So thinking of the image here as a site of enhancement and remixing where the transformative work of seductive science can be witnessed helps open the entanglements and tensions between reality and image, fantasy and materiality, which underpin this new visuality. So reality in this sense appears as a limited concept with a limited function to position the nation in a flawless and coherent form. So I'm saying it's not about deceiving, but rather enhancing one's own image. If reality is one end of the framework, then the other is the idea of smart packaging that would help highlight the deep cultural richness and economic potential of the post-reform nation. The idea of smart packaging seemed to convey more an expression of a deeply rooted belief that every product can be made valuable and saleable if illuminated properly. If packaged in the right way, the brand personality of the product can be enhanced and projected to the consumers efficiently. Thus, the remixed images are unified by three common characteristics. First, the creative use of the exclamation mark that used bodies, bodily marks, and natural features to weave the new creation myth of India into the idea of the nation. Second, the use of minimalist approach, tracing neat lines and silhouettes. Please notice this image. This does not look like a traditional Department of Visual Publicity image, but rather it has a completely different aesthetic representation over here. So second, minimalist approach, tracing neat lines and silhouettes to create an unchaotic look. So for a country which has 1.21 billion people, this is quite empty in a way. And third, the near absence of people, crowds in the visual framing of a country which is known as the second most populous nation in the world. The look of the nation framed for the viewers is that of an uncrowded, unchaotic, neat landscape where the traveler is distracted by nothing but sheer beauty and amazing natural scenery. The strategy to create the smart look was to subject the stereotypes, because we still have natural landscape as a prominent image here, to a twofold process of remixing. The first step was to treat the selective image with, I would say, digital scrubbing, which we all do these days, not in order to fantasize a new dream landscape, but to illuminate what was already there. The neat, clean, and well-scrubbed India was created through digital manipulations afforded by latest technology. The images thus were no longer that of, and I'm quoting the designer here, sad old India, dusty. We cleaned all that. This is the biggest thing we did in the campaign. We just cleansed it, just scrubbed it. It's the same old India we sold. It's not an artificial India. It's the same backwaters, but unfiltered. But it is very cleanly designed, cleanly projected, unquote. The digital technology was put to use to, I would say, fix the image, and fixing in all its senses, by removing blemishes and spots, zooming in and out to highlight or blur specific parts, enhancing colors, adjusting sharpness, cropping, slicing, and in some cases even rotating the picture to subjects upward down to create an incredible effect. The extra information, for example, see this. The extra information contained in the deep copy of the image is reorganized and even erased if found to be in excess, to set the focus sharply on all that is beautiful and worthy of looking. The image thus created is devoid of matter deemed superfluous and which threatens to detract the viewer's attention from the object of display. The question of excess and superfluity in the production of effective image making is not merely that of technical nature that disrupts the creation of well-focused and clean pictures. It also serves as a metaphorical device for the deep-rooted anxieties in the nation about the excess that clogs the outside gaze and risks unfixing the image itself. The human excess, the poor, the surplus labor, the vagabonds crowding the city's sidewalks, the undisciplined classes, or what Marx called the lumpen proletariat, superfluous to the neoliberal economy, is seen as an aberration in the smart look. The image makers desire to portray. The presence of excessive material waste, filth, unrecycled garbage dumps, littered streets, or toxic fumes of pollution in the urban centers similarly threaten to disrupt the clean image. The reality manufactured in the digitally scrubbed images therefore commands attention precisely for drawing explicitly the desires of the reformed nation. So once the raw images were dusted and scrubbed, the second step was to draw out the new personality of the nation from the ruins of the stereotypes. The idea was to match the smart new looks with the smart new personality of the nation, as clean, confident, and funny. The last characteristic of being humorous was underlined for me as the most important ingredient in the making of a smart nation. To be able to poke fun at oneself is to betray the confidence in one's strength, I was told. So in an iconic poster, these are just a few images, I can go back, but I want to show you this here. We witnessed the image of a lone tiger on the lookout for his prey in Ranthambore National Park. The picture is accompanied by words. I don't know if you can read here. It says, "Not all Indians are polite, hospitable, and vegetarians." The image, I'm sure this is a very well-known picture over here. The image and text together address the long-held discourses of pre-modern India with its primitive associations with nature and wildlife. But once again, we are seeing the stereotypes over here. The presence of the tiger, on the one hand, highlights the rich wildlife and natural scenery, and on the other, countermands a portrayal of Indians as meek, submissive, and obedient. The old description of India as the land of tigers and elephants is turned on its head to create a different narrative of India and Indians. The very cliché of the primitive wild India is used to portray Indians as confident and humorous people, and therefore turning a weakness into strength. The aim here clearly was not just to produce clever, witty advertising copy, but to use humor, and I quote, as symptomatic of a much bigger social phenomena, as an optimistic and extroverted new India, eager to make its presence felt in the global community. So these images then become personification of new India, or rather icons of a nation that is, I quote, is a far cry from the meek, tentative, and offshore destination of the last decade. We are talking of 1990s, and this happened a decade ago as well. The iconic images themselves have acquired attributes of personhood: clever, funny, smart, vital, seductive, desiring, to become totemic signs of a nation in search of its place in the global scheme of things. The smart image makeover is almost a visual restoration of pride, especially for the urban youth, who imagine themselves part of the global community far more than the previous generations. The popularity of the images within and without lie in the projection of exaggerated realities that the nation was said to have failed to display in the outside world. So, as a way of conclusion, I'm going to return here to the first image that I showed you of this auto rickshaw in Berlin, which is called India 2.0. This installation, which is the green and yellow auto rickshaw dressed up in pink roof. Maybe I can just go back to it. I want you to take a look at it. It is dressed up in pink roof made of sheer luxury fabric, matching pink silk cushions positioned to display the dramatic transformations unfolding in India after the reforms. The choice of auto rickshaw as a symbol of new incredible India is noteworthy. Auto rickshaws are a regular part of the Indian urban scene, as you would know. Even the Delhi airport sells little toys to show India. It is a part of Indian urban life, a slow-paced but affordable means of transport. The very name suggests that the vehicle is an improvisation of the cycle rickshaws that are popular for short-distance travel. Yet, auto rickshaws are not only not unique to India, given their popularity across Asia and Africa, but were introduced in India as recently as 1950s by the Indian licensee of Piaggio, an Italian automobile manufacturer. The point I want to make here is not about the lack of authenticity as such, but tensions and contradictions in the ways in which the seemingly stable and pure category of our own cultural history for New India is constructed in the first place. So take, for instance, the naming process of the campaign itself. If the original idea recalled the Orientalist frame of seeing India, the substitute, incredible, seeks to invoke the similar sense of grandeur and awe among the global publics. What is noteworthy also is the process, in this process, is that the name for the authentic post-exotic self, that is incredible, is extracted from the English language rather than the vernacular. I was told during my fieldwork that no word exists in the Hindi language that can fully describe the potential and richness of contemporary globalized India. While India has been translated for the global publics in the shape of Incredible India, it has also been translated back for the vernacular publics as Atulya Bharat. That literally means incomparable or unique India. It is telling that the multitude of vernacular languages is found to be lacking words to appropriately describe the post-exotic self. Similarly, the graphic identity for New India in the logo form, which is the exclamation mark, is also extracted from the global archive of the printing presses in Europe. Yet the foreign is not all that easily assimilated in the visual imagery of New India. As I have already shown you some images over here, for example this, that images of Incredible India circumvent the Muslim past and directly connect the present to the ancient past of India. In this rendition of the global authentic self, the traces of the Islamic past are largely erased. Because what I'm showing you over here is only one of the two images of Taj Mahal, which is a Muslim monument. But I can tell you a bit more about it. But like these are the only two images, but they are not presented as part of Mughal history, but rather as a gift from a husband to a wife, with a very humorous line that these days men get away by just giving flowers and chocolates, and just look at this incomparable gift. So that again is a language of consumption, which is very different, which is the language of neoliberal reforms. So this is the difficulty. What I'm trying to show you is this whole question of foreign and how do you, the tensions and discomfort of dealing with the foreign. There is this logo, there is auto rickshaw, and then there is, of course, this entire Muslim past. The tensions and contradictions of dealing with what is seen as foreign, and this whole process of remixing, arranging that original, that authentic, to create a new original that aligns with the aesthetics of the contemporary. So I think I'll stop here.
Very interesting. The floor is open for questions and discussion.
So I can just show you these pictures, which I didn't show you. This whole, you can just see the theme over here, where incredible melts with nature.
Yeah.
Now with the stripes of this tiger. Or here, where a woman walking with a pot, you know, in Rajasthan. Or Himalayas, where again, it's a natural feature which forms the incredibility, that exclamation mark. Or the backwaters of Kerala, where the boat and that little greenery becomes, you know, that spot. So I just wanted to show you, these are many, many, many different pictures of incredible India.